See here. All right, everyone. Welcome to March of the Advisor Ambassador Program for 2020, and happy Super Tuesday to everybody. Hope everyone's having a good Super Tuesday so far. My name is Zach Hewells, and I work in the Marketing and Communications Department at NAFA HQ. Excuse me. And today I'm very excited to introduce to you our very special guest, Brian Haney, who is a NAFA member from Greater Washington, D.C. He's actually live via Salt Lake City right now, so he's always on some trip, making deals, doing business. He's going to be presenting Prospecting Like a Pro today. Brian is a very, very active member in NAFA. He has been really involved in NAFA over the last 10 years, and he actually just this past year was in Washington Business Journal's 40 Under 40 in 2019, and in 2020, it looks like he was NAFA's ID 20 recipients. Or no, that was 2019 as well. But Brian is just really active. He's on the NAFA Greater Washington board, and he's currently serving as immediate past president. But I'm going to let Brian take things over so that he can tell you about prospecting like a pro, because no one knows like Brian. So take it away, buddy.
Awesome. Thank you, Zach. Hey there, everybody. Thanks for just taking some time to get on. This is a subject that I love, because who doesn't like finding ways to get more business and move the needle? So hopefully you're excited to kind of dive into some tips and tricks. I'm going to cover a lot of ground, and this is going to be a lot of fun. So I got a few designations, and I've been pretty fortunate in my short little brief under 40, still under 40, by the way, professional career that, NAFA has really helped me see a lot of and achieve a lot of success. So I'm just grateful to be able to share some of that with you today. Before I do anything though, you're coming on to a presentation about prospecting. I'm going to take a second, use the Zoom function, the chat function. Is there anything, any burning question, anything that you want me to cover in the prospecting arena at all? Whatever it is, feel free to type it out now. We'll take a little bit of time for it. I'll talk about this. We'll have our little Jeopardy music. If you don't have anything now, but you come up with it later, feel free to also type during the presentation, and anything that we accumulate, I'll make sure to answer at the end. But since I don't see anybody at this point. Good. All right. So I'll just keep on going. Here's what I'm going to go through then. Prospecting really about it's marketing, right? It's a marketing dynamic. What we're doing is not very different than any other business that tries to bring consumers in the door. So I'm going to cover really, what is a good marketing plan what do you need to have to make a good marketing plan for yourself? And if you haven't thought of prospecting or marketing in that way, hopefully that'll give you a good framework to be really comprehensive about this. I am going to spend a lot of time on brand, because I think that that's something that our industry misses to a certain extent. And I'll also explain why I feel that way about that, and why I've seen challenges for us as really, so we're the face of our industry for the consuming public, for the most part. But we don't necessarily understand how brand needs to operate. So I'm going to really get into that as well. I'm going to give you a couple tips on how to be awesome at networking. I don't know if that's part of how you like to develop relationships, or it's part of how you prospect or market, but hopefully you'll enjoy some of that. And then I'll give, a whole litany of things that's going to really go soup to nuts. How do I roll something out, a plan strategically to prospect like the pro? So let's get into this thing, all right? So what are the elements of a good marketing plan? You really do need to understand what your brand value proposition is. And this is really, why should somebody work with you? Okay. Not just what do you do in terms of delivering something to the consuming public. Hey, you know, I'm a life insurance guy, or I'm a PNC agent, or I'm a wealth manager, or whatever. But why should somebody get those products and or services through you specifically? We're gonna get into that more. Know your target audience. Now, this is a concept that I don't know if many of you have thought much about. So the term is a buyer persona. And I'm, you know, it's really, it goes beyond just, hey, you know, I want to work with dentists or CPAs, attorneys, or white collar professionals, or dentists under the age of 40, or it's really about using metadata to better understand who you're trying to reach and get to know kind of their mannerisms, their personality, and also really understand almost your target audience on a very personal and individual level, because a lot of really good marketing in today's economy is about hyper customization, hyper personalization. So you really want to find strategic ways to reach people on an individual, on a very personal level, because as most of us probably know, what we do is very personal. So getting a real strategic buyer persona is critical. Understanding what are the issues that your target audience faces, whether you consider it a pain point or just you know, things that you know people might be struggling with. Now, the other part of this is there's a big difference between expressed needs and unexpressed needs. And I think that the difference is not so much that the need itself may be different, it's the why. So this is a point, the point here is you want to understand not just the what, but also the why, right? If somebody says, I need life insurance, that's the what. Maybe there's a pain there. Why do they need it? Maybe they just had a friend who's recently married pass away unexpectedly. So they're feeling pain and concern and seeing themselves differently, right? So it's not just, you know, the surface level things are the things that we articulate, but we also want to, in a good prospecting and marketing strategy, we want to go a little bit deeper. We want to understand as much as we possibly can about that. And that leads us to know how people like to be engaged. You know, since this is a webinar, I can't ask you to raise your hands, but you can go ahead and type out if you like, if you're the type of person that still likes to get phone solicitations, or if you're the kind of person that loves junk email, right? I'm being a little glib about this, but there's a lot of ways that, you know, you used to maybe use in terms of strategy or engagement that maybe we need to reconsider. How do I want to communicate? And the key to all of this is really, you want to take not just the, you know, there's a lot of times where, you know, the smile and dial, or you might have a manager saying, you know, this is the way that you need to go about this. And that's all well and good. I really want you to try to sit in the chair of your target audience. Have an audience first mentality about all of this, because then you'll reach people on their terms. Because by the way, the most effective marketing organizations, the most effective prospectors do that now and do that very, very well. As I mentioned earlier, the pain points, how do people go about making decisions? This is not just the what, the why, but what are the things that someone needs to see, whether it's, you know, are they an engineer type? Do they need a lot of information and data? Are they emotional? What type of decision-making process do they go down? You want to find out as much as you can upfront. And to the degree that you can't know that, then maybe there's some tips or tricks that we can have to try to open that door in conversation or networking that can give you insight as to how somebody might go about making decisions. And then the way that you win is to create synergy between your audience, what they're looking for, how they're thinking, and how they might be feeling about their life situation as it might relate to the financial services and solutions that you can deliver, and your value proposition, right? Because your values and your proposition is what's going to speak most and open up the most amount of doors, not, hey, I can get you cheap term insurance or disability or all that other stuff. All right. Brand thinking, mentioned branding. So this is kind of where the genesis and really the foundation of really good prospecting needs to come. It's that value proposition extension. Why do you do what you do? Why do you matter? Why do you matter to the consuming public? If somebody is a stark raving client of yours already, frankly, a lot of this might be best asked to your top clients. You know, ask your best client, why did you decide to work with me to begin with? What was it about I did, what I offered, how I approached you? You know, what continues to make you excited about working with me? And just sit there, listen, take notes, ask good questions, because really that's the best way. If you're struggling to know what your value proposition might be, ask the people that already like you, work with you, have said yes to you, why they did that, and that might give you a good, healthy framework. But you know, these are not necessarily product or services or solutions questions, right? This is really more about relationships. So just kind of look at this and understand that you want to get in a brand mentality, and the fact that it's brand you. People don't buy your stuff, they buy you. I tell that to people all the time. It doesn't, you know, the average astute, the affluent consumer cares a lot less about the corporate statement that shows up on there, you know, in the mail, as the fact that you're the person or the representative listed in relation to that statement. Okay, and being able to be an extension of who you are and being able to grow who you are is what prospecting is all about. So what do you do? If you want to go ahead and type out an answer. If you don't know the answer to this question, or if you have a long-winded answer, I'm going to give you it. What we do is all about the human transformation business, because what we're delivering is allowing people to live their best lives, to achieve what they want to achieve, and protecting them from things that they don't even want to think about. None of those things that I just described are about money, insurance, or any of the kind of stuff that I think we commonly get into the weeds on. It's all about, we don't live to work, we work to live. And so really recognizing that what you do deals with how do you help people transform their lives? How do you emphasize that you're delivering things that allow people to maintain a good lifestyle or improve their lifestyle or do things that matter to them a lot more than the money part? That's critical in how you're going to engage and approach people. And the second part of this is, why do you do what you do? And this really is about your belief system and maybe kind of your vision and mission for your practice, right? You know, we do things as a professional. The why matters as much to today's consumer as anything else. So being able to not just tell people, this is who I am as a professional and these are the solutions that I can provide, but oh, by the way, I am passionate about doing what I do for these reasons. That's probably as important as the services and solutions themselves. So I really want you to be mindful of these two things, because these are going to be critical in your prospecting practice. This is about, so again, branding, this is your ethos, right? Your identity. I already said it earlier, right? People aren't buying your stuff, they're buying you. The best prospecting and whatever you're going to develop or whatever approach you're going to take, and through whatever mediums, and we'll get to that a little bit, it's really now about communicating a very personal message that allows people to get to know you better before they decide if they want to work with you. The great thing is, in this era of digital disruption and technology, there's a lot of ways that we can now tell people about ourselves before they ever even come into contact with us, right? So, you know, hopefully part of your marketing and prospecting plan is going to be a digital component to that. And by the way, if it's not, I would suggest highly that you should have a digital component to it as well. And kind of the mode, I think, of communicating value and building relationships and drawing people in. There used to be, I'm going to pause for a second to talk about, there's a concept in marketing in the industry that talks about the difference between outbound versus inbound marketing. Outbound usually refers to what kind of a lot of people consider the old way to market, where you're kind of, you know, you're talking at the consuming public and hoping that your message connects with enough people that they turn around and buy your stuff. Whereas inbound marketing is more about inviting people in to come connect with you rather than telling them things that you hope is landing the right way. So you want to have a really compelling story to start to communicate, because storytelling, by the way, is the oldest form of human communication. So it's extremely powerful. That's why we love really good movies, books, maybe even podcasts or things. We love stories. We love characters. That's part of kind of our human nature, I think. And so as you're prospecting, if you're thinking about it in terms of how can I be telling a very compelling story, how can I also be listening to the stories of others and finding the synergies, I think that that's going to be really significant. And also, once you get prospects, how do you reinforce that value? How does that story continue? And how do you weave your story now into your clients' lives? All right, so we're going to get into some practical brand engagement things. If I were to find effective ways to prospect without directly asking people for business, one of the things that I've always done that's really helped me get a lot of success, as well as develop a lot of brand ambassadors for my practice, is connecting people and bringing them together. The psychological part of why that is called the law of reciprocity, which is simply, this natural instinct that if somebody does us a favor, we are inclined to reciprocate that favor back. So if somebody's good to us, we want to naturally be good back to them. So this, the tip here is, as you're developing relationships, be asking people, who are you trying to meet? Or, hey, Mr. Business Owner, what is your ideal client or, prospect? What would be the next big thing that if you had this relationship, it would mean, the difference between an average year to a great year, right? I'm talking to either prospects or people that are in my sphere of influence, but I'm asking them about their story. And I really want to know what represents a win for them. That may have nothing to do with what I do, but it's a great way to, connect, build relationships, and then find ways to say, hey, I might know so-and-so, maybe I should be able to bring the two of you together. That can be in big or small ways. If you go to a networking event and you just have a friend, or you meet somebody and you ask them who they want to meet, and then you find that person, just find a way to connect people together. That's hugely critical. And it builds so much brand value for you as a person and a professional that you probably aren't consciously aware of. Back to your why. Most of us have causes or organizations or things that, outside of what we do professionally that are really important to us. For example, I've gone on several missions because I care deeply about the refugee crisis. I've gone overseas to help refugees fleeing the conflicts in the Middle East. That's a part of my why, has nothing to do with what I do professionally, but that's something that, it's important for people to understand that motivates me to do well professionally. So it can become, it's not something that I would say you prospect by telling people that you care about the same cause that they care about and therefore they should work with you, but it's a great way for people to know you on a more human, personal, and meaningful level that will go far. It'll take your brand, your value proposition, and what you can deliver professionally a lot further, because they know why you're doing what you're doing, and it's not just about delivering that product, service, or solution. And it's also a great place to meet people. So, if you're going serving at a community kitchen or what have you. Also, find ways to deliver value at your expense or at your cost, not free, because most of us understand that you do get what you pay for. So if somebody does something for you for free, you don't necessarily value that too much. If you're listening to people's concerns and pain points and you can give them free advice, direct them in some way professionally, do something for them with no expectation that they're going to become a client, that goes a long way. And it also builds a lot of brand value that you're a subject matter expert that's just willing to help people out. If you're not on a committee in some capacity, you need to be. This is something that I think we don't necessarily think a lot of in terms of prospecting, but it's hugely important, whether it's within an organization like NAFA, whether it's, at a chamber of commerce, whether it's at a Rotary Club, whatever it is, there's always places that you can go to serve, to be a part of something, to be on a committee. You want to find out the things that are going to give you some mileage, open up the right doors, but also allow you to be of service to a group that you may be trying to attract. And if you really want to elevate your brand profile, seek out opportunities to be considered a leader. Doesn't have to be a leader for what you do professionally, but you get into leadership. That goes a long way. If somebody says you're the president of that, whatever, just the fact that you're the president and you're in this leadership position, it does a lot for your profile, and really people will gravitate to that. It's kind of the implied subject matter expertise that whether or not you even feel you have it, by being in a role of leadership, people will infer that you do have it. So these are all things, it's about differentiation. And I would, again, by applying all these tips, that's part of how I would, I became a Business Journal 40 Under 40 winner in the DC area, because there were over 742 applications for that. And God bless them, I'm still not entirely sure why they picked me, but if your marketing, your prospecting, and really your practice has not yet embraced digital transformation, this is the point where you strap it on and you say, okay, I got to figure this out for myself. Now, I may be speaking to a lot of people that this is already a part of it, so hopefully I don't have to, beat this drum too much. But we've just talked about brand. We've just talked about a lot of intangible things. We've talked about, value propositions, why, relational components. I know we haven't even gotten into how do I make a good phone call, or how do I get a prospecting list, or whatever. But the brand component now, how do I elevate my brand digitally? The next part then is, what are the ways that I would be able to outreach, right? What are the ways that I'm going to digitally connect to people, hopefully many of whom are going to be potential clients, target audience, prospects, etc. And then the last part of that is your marketing plan. This is your digital marketing plan, right? So what are the right tools and technologies that you'll then implement? That, where do I figure out what are the right tools and technologies? Is it what I want to do? No, it goes back to, where's my audience? What's their buyer persona? Where are they online? How are they already engaging? I need to meet them where they are. I don't want to assume that everybody's going to find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, etc. Right? So that's why that buyer persona component that I said at the beginning is very, very important. If you really have a good understanding of your target market and audience, you want to meet them where they are, not expect that they're going to come to you in some way. So that's important. But I'm going to get in and say, if this isn't, if these tools are not part of your strategy, I think you're probably missing something. If you've never Googled yourself, do it. The first thing that I would suggest as you're considering, examining your brand is just, you need to audit yourself first and see what you look like. I did an entire branding workshop. I'm not going to go into this too much, but it is important to see what people would find if they're searching for anything that you might be, the product provider or solution to. So take a look at yourself, audit yourself, see what's out there. That gives you a very good starting point, and it's going to be very helpful. And then, I'm not going to get into SEO or things that you can do to, rise in Google rankings, but just, it's a really important part of your marketing plan to see where you are today. And then the next three areas, I think, are things that, Instagram, some people may say it's just not my cup of tea. That's fine. But, it's with billions of people on both Facebook and LinkedIn. If you don't have that digital presence, then I in some respects, people might say that you don't really exist. If you don't exist digitally, you don't exist in today's economy. So, it's really critical that you're building this space and this profile out as you're prospecting. The last thing you want to do is meet somebody or, have somebody refer their friend to you, and then they can't really find you online before they meet you, because I guarantee you, people will Google you. They will check out your profile. They will look you up before they sit down with you. So you want to make sure that whatever they find is exactly what you want, and it perpetuates that same brand value, that proposition. All right, how to be awesome at networking. Inigo had some good ideas. I'm going to get into some other ones, but lots of good ways to go about creating, forming, and building relationships. So since I can't tell if people are laughing, I don't know if this one lands, but a fun way to start to think about, forming one-on-one relationships. So Captain Obvious's top 5 ways not to introduce yourself at networking events. Number 1, hey, didn't we date in high school? Number 2, do I have something in my teeth? Number 3, hey there, how do you feel about pit stains? Number 4, hello, you look like a pervert. Let me tell you a funny story. And number 5, hey, sorry my hand is so sticky. All right, now for some real stuff. Top 5 ways to effectively introduce yourself that actually are going to cut through so many barriers and create such great relational opportunities that you're going to be amazed. And I'll go through the top 5 and then give you a little thematic truth at the end of this, all right? So number 1, hey there, if you're half as awesome as those shoes you're wearing, then I cannot wait to get to know you. A lot harder to read these than it is to just say it off the cuff. Hey, I came over because somebody told me you are the most interesting person in the room and I had to meet you. Number 3, a little bit more common. We haven't met before. I'm, fill in the blank with your name, I'm Brian Haney. How do you know the host of this event? What personal passion project are you working on right now? And number 5, hey there, so what was the highlight of your week? Why are these maybe good icebreakers or ways to start a nice conversation? Well, hopefully it's obvious to you that none of these have anything to do with what you do, not even really what somebody else might do. Well, these are great conversation starters, and some of the elements of why these are effective deal with, how you compliment somebody, how do you get somebody to open up, how do you start to have a good conversation. Becoming a master conversationalist, and really, if you want to see your value proposition communicated more effectively, all this is really about developing, maintaining, and then conveying charisma. Right? So master conversationalists know how to engage people in memorable conversation and then know how to keep that conversation going. At most networking events, what's the number 1 question everybody ultimately asks very early in the conversation? What do you do, right? And it's always this kind of, whether you've got a really great elevator pitch or not, the problem with that question is that we understand that what we really do professionally, even if we love it, that's not really who we are. And that's not even necessarily something that somebody's that interested in, especially if they don't know you. And let's face it, how interesting is insurance? It's the non-narcotic cure for insomnia, folks. We got to be honest about some of this stuff. So, that's not maybe where I want most of the conversation to be. And I also think that, if somebody's going to want to follow up with you, it's not going to be because necessarily they had, a lot of synergy with or are looking for a financial provider, but it will be if you demonstrated to them that you were really interested in them, you were really engaging, you came across as highly likable, highly competent. The person that wins in networking, it's not being the most interesting person in the room, it's being the most interested person in the room. Find ways to get past the small talk and the BS to get into big talk. That's huge. Use conversation as a tool from soup to nuts. Everything from building rapport, socialization, flirting, if that's obviously maybe not part of your prospecting process, but it's critical. Being a good conversationalist is critical. It's communication, it's storytelling, right? It's all these things that we're talking about. And this also carries over in phone calls as well. So if you're dialing for dollars, you need to be a good conversationalist. You need to be able to have a script that isn't what the typical salesperson has. Charismatic people maintain this kind of ratio, right? They don't talk the most, they listen the most. They ask the most engaging questions. They talk about things that people actually like to talk about. And I think where the rubber meets the road is, can you find ways to ask clarifying questions that really get people down to that? How did they make decisions? A lot of what you find is if you listen well, people will tell you not just what they like and think, but in the way that they tell that story, it'll say a lot about how they make decisions. If somebody tells you a story about something that they really enjoyed, it'll tell you why they felt it was enjoyable, or why they liked it, or why it was a good decision, right? So it's not just the story itself that has the value I was talking about, it's what it says about that person and how they assign value to the things in their life, how they may then assign value to you as a professional, right? Obviously, when you're speaking, you're not learning. Have fun, right? Have fun digitally, have fun in person, have fun. Find a good outfit if that's your cup of tea. I've got a handful of these. You saw the first picture. Maybe that's not you. I'm also a sock person. We can talk about that offline. But, you know, networking is, in general, uncomfortable. If you can be the person that injects fun, that is somebody that people want to be around, and why do people want to be around others? It's for how they made them feel, right? So if you're able to just do many of these simple things very, very well, you'll be surprised at how easy it is for you to actually pivot these relationships at some point to business conversations, because people want to do business with people they know, like, and trust. And when you demonstrate all of these things, people will know, like, and trust you a lot faster than if you had to go through some long, drawn out rigmarole. Eye contact is critical, you know, in a instant microwave mentality. I got to look at my phone every 10 seconds society. Making good eye contact is a great way to stand out, because I got to tell you, most people don't even know how to do that anymore. Making other people smile is huge. If you go about trying to make somebody's day, believe me, they will remember you. Please, 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 in social and professional arenas, try to avoid talking about business, because nobody likes it and nobody cares. And then, again, I love humor. That's my thing. If you're not as comfortable with humor, that's okay. Find ways, though, that you can become comfortable, especially for the purposes of prospecting and building relationships. So you don't have to become, as most of you can tell, my short stint as, you know, a professional stand-up comedian from my top 5 was very short-lived. So I'm glad I'm still in the financial business, but, you know, just finding ways to make people laugh, or just have fun and laugh with them if they're telling something funny, goes a long way. All right, we're going to get to the end of the line here. How do you actually go about doing this? I've talked about what are the elements of marketing plan. So I would say the first and critical step before you decide how many calls that you're going to make and how many people you're going to see, hopefully you have an entire marketing plan that you've already prepared, right? Where you've said, these are the people at a high level I'm trying to reach. These are all of the ways that I can make these cold relationships warm through areas of synergy, commonality, and personal connection, right? And by the way, I've taken enough time to do a lot of research based on my target audience. These are how they might like somebody to connect with them, because these are the places that they're already operating. These are the events that I want to go to, because I know the people I'm trying to reach already go to those events, and it creates a good opportunity for me. Or I'm going to go and connect to this Facebook group because it's where people that I'm trying to target are already engaging and talking and having conversations, right? So preparation is key. Don't just get a list of your top 200 friends, family, and people that you know and rock and roll with the script. That's a way to go about it. But if you really want to, you know, prospect like a pro, be a lot more prepared before you even pick up the phone or send an email or anything like that. If your plan rests on one or two things, hopefully you crush those one or two things. But I would absolutely suggest that you want to be marketing and prospecting in a variety of different ways. And like I said, if some component isn't digital, I implore you, please reconsider that. But this is, you know, it should be a combination approach, and you need to make time for all of it. Don't just make time for the things that you're the most comfortable with. You need to be able to do it all because all of it may have a significant impact, especially in the areas that are going to give you the highest value, right? To neglect your digital presence, even if you're really, really good in networking, all those people that you know, they liked you, they're like, wow, that person was awesome. And they go back and they look you up online after the fact. Well, I thought they were awesome, but now that I see them online, I don't know anymore, right? All of these things do matter. So it has to work in tandem, right? So your calls, your emails, also think about your messaging. You want your messaging to be consistent. I think one of the ways that people do themselves a disservice, not just in our industry, but in marketing in general, is we create something called cognitive dissonance, right? Inconsistency where, you know, you say one thing in one place and then you say something that's a little bit different or maybe a lot different in another place. And whether you intended that to be the case, what you've just created is inconsistency in who you are as the message maker. So that's why it's really important that, you know, if you're going to talk to somebody on the phone, that type of a communication and that type of an experience should also translate into some of the ways that you communicate via email and the ways that you communicate online, and, you know, whether you're on Twitter or you're on Facebook, whatever that is. There needs to be a lot of consistency and synergy because you don't want to be putting things out there unintentionally because you feel like you need to, and have it actually be something that undermines your overall prospecting marketing plan. And I'll say this as a great example. Let's use LinkedIn as a great example. What am I talking about? A lot of us may have services like Hearsay Social or things like Marketing Pro where we have ways to kind of set it and forget it and do automatic social media posting, right? And that's great. It's great because it shows activity online, and that's important. It's important that if you're going to have a digital presence that you actually are active digitally. Problem with that is, and not a lot of us think about that, is how many other people like us might be posting the exact same messages? I mean, if you go on LinkedIn and just take 30 minutes to go through a feed, you can actually tell with a high degree of certainty how much thought went into each post by somebody. And it doesn't take much to personalize even automatic messages, especially if your compliance necessitates that that's how you go about it. But the key to that is that you take that extra step to make the same communication more personal and also more synergized to your brand, not just think that by having some kind of regular engagement online that that's doing you a favor. It may not be doing you a favor, it may be doing you a disservice because people can tell. You can tell when you go online, so can your client. So think about that. Your plan needs to have what's going to happen in the next 7 days, what's going to happen over the next month, what's going to happen over the next 60 and 90 days, right? It needs to be comprehensive. Beyond 90 days, yes, you can have it go all the way out to a year, but I'm really talking about drilling into some things and then being able to measure yourself on a very, very granular level. You want to measure progress with every possible opportunity. Not all efforts in marketing and prospecting may directly lead you to a client. There may be things that you're doing through social media or online that are less about trying to draw people in and more about reinforcing your brand. That's fine, but you want to make sure that you're able to assess that still on an ongoing basis. Is it effective? Does it seem like people are engaging, listening, liking, commenting, right? Or maybe I'm just kind of putting things out there and it seems to be to deaf ears because nobody seems to be engaging with me, which makes me suggest or think that maybe I'm not reaching my audience the way that I wanted to, or maybe that this isn't where my audience is going to engage with me like I thought. Be fearless. Send an email, make a phone call. What's the worst thing that can happen? Somebody tells you no, or there's no interest, there's no opportunity. Then you're no worse off than you were before you sent it. So, you know, I think anybody that's had any kind of success in sales, especially in the financial industry, will tell you, you know, you just have as thick skin as humanly possible, right? And try to not just be, you know, like Teflon or bulletproof about it, but turn that, you know, fear factor into an opportunity factor, meaning, you know, somebody's telling me, you know, if I get 9 no's, then I'm just, you know, just 9 people closer to my next yes. Find a way to frame it positively, because that's the greatest way to overcome fear, overcome, you know, that 1,000-pound phone that didn't have a problem sending a text to my friend on, but all of a sudden now that I'm picking it up to call somebody for business purposes, it feels like that's the last thing in the world I want to do. But try to also find a way to psychologically reframe it, because, oh, by the way, do you think your emotional state comes through when you talk to somebody, whether they can see you or not? It absolutely does. So being in a good frame of mind when you're communicating, when you're writing an email, when you're posting online, the reality is it does come through. So be fearless and be excited. You know, where's the next opportunity going to come from? It's going to take you a long way. And please don't be like a traditional salesperson. It just doesn't work anymore. And people not only don't like it anymore, but it's in a world where everything is customized to the individual. When you're seen that way, it does you the biggest disservice, because it's like you're lower than just even an insurance person. It takes you further away from that opportunity. So, avoid salesy talk, avoid that whole, hey, I'm going to send you this pre-written LinkedIn message to somebody that I don't know. That's kind of like, I'm not really telling you I'm trying to solicit you, but at the end of the day, since we've all received those same things, we've all sought the same thing about the person that sent them, it's not really beneficial, right? Don't do that. Meet people where they are, focus on building connections and relationships, not necessarily always on converting that client from day one. All right, resources. I am a huge behavioral economics nerd as much as I am a technology nerd. So if you want to get better at a lot of what I was just talking about, you got to read these books. Influence, Robert Cialdini, he's a master. That book changed my practice in massive ways. He also released a new one, so I didn't put this up there, but if you're writing things down, it's called Persuasion. How can you, before you even try to persuade somebody, how can you create the right atmosphere so that way the person you're trying to persuade is more receptive to what your message is? Huge. What everybody is saying is really, Joe Navarro is a former FBI profiler. So no better place to go to get tips on how to read body language than from somebody who was the human lie detector for the FBI for 2 decades. Vanessa Van Edwards, her book, Captivate, that's really applicable, especially when it comes to a lot of the networking tips and tricks. She's got some great stuff in there. Her website is scienceofpeople.com, great place. And then Power Storytelling, Ty Bennett, that's a quick read. So, and it's relatively inexpensive. Throw all of these on your Amazon list, grab them, buy them. If you want to listen to them on Kindle or whatever, you got to do it. Other resources in terms of developing yourself professionally. If you're not a member of NAFA yet, you need to be. We got so many people that are really good, people that are exceedingly better than I am at this. So you want to be around the best until you become the best. You got to be a part of this. Toastmasters is another great way to help just overcome fear, communicate more effectively, all that kind of stuff. And then Sandler, it's in parts of the financial industry. It's a great training program on process and on understanding how to take a psychological approach to really business development. And last but not least, I know I said join NAFA. It's important to realize that, for me, NAFA has been foundational in any of the success that I've had. So what are some practical ways that NAFA can support you as you're prospecting, marketing, and branding yourself? Well, everybody loves some alphabet soup. Consumers do not look for generalists anymore. They look for experts. What better way to become an expert than to have a few letters after your name, right? So NAFA's got 2 phenomenal professional designations that can definitely make a difference and an impact in your world. So you need to consider those. Finding ways to, opportunities to get awards or to be recognized for the way that you serve your clients and the way that you serve your community and your industry. That's very meaningful. I would venture to guess that you've probably made a personal buying decision in the last year, maybe somewhat motivated by the type of company that you are purchasing a product or service from, right? Maybe it's 7th generation because they're a greener, home goods provider instead of buying Tide or something like that. Or maybe you went to a particular restaurant because, they were better at developing themselves in the community. The things that you do for others, for people that go beyond your professional sphere, matter to you. So elevating your profile by taking advantage of the NAFA Quality Award is a good example. These are not just about your production, it's about how you retain your clients and how you actually build a service experience and a practice experience, not just how you can knock it out of the park. Important service opportunities are also important. NAFA has Leadership in Life Institute. That's what Lily is. It is what it sounds like. It's a 6-month intensive that makes you a better leader. All of us becoming better leaders only benefits our practice and only makes you more effective. Great thing to take advantage of. And then there's a ton of other things. I could keep you on this thing for 2 hours, but we don't have that kind of time. So I would highly encourage you to take a look at all of this. If you have any questions about any of it, feel free to reach out to me directly. And with that, I'm going to wrap it up and hopefully open it up to some questions, some dialogue, etc. Questions, comments, concerns, needs, desires, longings, or considerations. I'm Brian Haney. I have 2 thumbs, and I love financial services.
Well, thanks so much, Brian. Appreciate it. And
I saw some activity here on the chat, so let's see what we got. How often do you prospect? What a great question, Cheryl. I would say I prospect every day. So often. I think a more realistic answer to that question is I divide my time literally on a day-by-day basis based off of the parts of my prospecting and marketing plan that I'm going to work on. Because I can't, I don't do the same thing every day, and none of us do, right? So I always work off of a model work week. So I have very granularly divided up my time, and I do certain activities on certain days that are either better for me or better prepare me for the other activities later on in the week. And so, for example, it's a lot of the social media that I might be doing, whether it's engaging in conversation, starting conversations in either a Twitter. By the way, one of the best things that social media allows us to do is have great conversations and do a lot of due diligence and just, nothing better than to go on and ask a question and just see what happens. So if you're not doing that online, you should be. It's a great way to, not sell people, but pull people into a relationship. But anyway, I do a lot of that, usually at the beginning of a week. If I have a podcast, so I do release like a podcast episode on a Monday, just because that way things are going to be top of mind. If somebody's going into work, starting their work week out, it's good for me to have some of that stuff out there just in front of people. I try to have activities that involve seeing people either face-to-face or preparing for that, phoning, that kind of stuff. So I can fill out a calendar Tuesdays through Thursdays, especially where I'm at in DC. The worst traffic days are Mondays and Fridays. So that's another part of how that works. But obviously that doesn't apply to everybody based on where you are. But so I'll have different activities on those days, mostly designed to make sure that I maximize that FaceTime. So I have carved out FaceTime time blocks that, my activities on a Monday, the goal needs to be, I have to have all the appointment slots filled. So I'll do the activities that lead to that. I don't just try to leave my email open in perpetuity because it's a big distraction and it's a big distraction for everybody. So, when I am plugging into something, I actually do unplug from other things. So I think that maybe one of the, the most critical components to any kind of prospecting success is discipline. Just make sure that you do what you should be doing when you should be doing it, and you don't do other things. Because it's just easy. It's just easy for all of us to, check out Twitter, do this, pick up our phone, whatever it is. So I'm happy to share what my model work week looks like from my practice. If that's something that you want, send me an email. Happy to just, give you a lot more granular details. But the reality is I am always prospecting. And even now, I'm at a conference in Salt Lake City in our largest market. So even conferences for me matter. And I'm very strategic when I go to things where, there's going to be a lot of networking, human interaction, that kind of stuff. And I think very strategically about it. I know, by the way, I went to this conference without business cards. How many people do you think would be terrified not to have business cards on you? It's one of the best things that I do sometimes. I don't always do it. There's an intent behind it, but you have no idea how much control you get when you get business cards from others because I have a certain type of interaction, and then I get to control responding to them versus me giving the control away and hoping that somebody sends me an email. So I gathered a lot already, and I've already literally from a 3-day conference, I've teed up 4 appointments before I even leave. I'm still here. So prospecting, you know, it's always happening for me. It just depends on mode, method, and really time, and how do I discipline myself to make sure that I'm maintaining it so that way the engine's always going. And I think another point I want to make that I didn't in there, I think we always tend to see the client, the purchasing decision as part of like the real end goal. And let's face it, you know, if people aren't buying from us, becoming our clients, doing insurance or investing, whatever, we don't exist. But there's a significant amount of value in strategic partnerships and relationships that is prospecting in and of itself, but maybe those people aren't ultimately going to turn around and become clients. But if they become great practice ambassadors that send me business, that's also something that I think is meaningful. So if you're looking at your marketing and prospecting plan and you haven't made a margin of time to develop strategic relationships, then I think your plan is incomplete, because most of our, and people say this all the time, oh, most of my business is referrals. We don't get to that place if you haven't developed those types of relationships. And even if you have, and you're getting your business that way, you still need to manicure those relationships, improve them, look for new opportunities, et cetera. Because, you know, the way our industry is going, the way technology is going, people may not be reaching us and buying from us the way that they have been in the past. So I'm always thinking about that, and I'm always trying to make sure that I have, you know, really refined, new, and strategic, really, I call them brand ambassadors, because that's what they are. They're telling my story without me having to tell it. So that's also something else. So that's a great question. Anybody else got any other questions? All right. Covered a lot of ground, and I think we're on time.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks so much, Brian. I really appreciate your time today. And if anyone has any questions for Brian at a later time, like he said, you feel free to reach out to him by email. And yeah, and if you have any questions for me, feel free to reach out to me at recruitment@nefa.org, and I'd be happy to pass anything along to Brian or answer your question about the program itself. But if you would like the recording, I'll be sending it out later this week, and be on the lookout for future classes. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.